Alright, welcome to step 7. In this case, hey, there's a little more light. Step 7, we're going to finish up with the last of the axles on the prime mover and go forward. So starting with what we have, notice that there's a peg on part E30 that goes forward so that you're not attaching it to part E31, which does fit on pretty nice. And make sure that you're using the flat side and not the side that has the, I guess, the detail or the indent. Put them together like so. And as usual, watch out for the glue. And then dealing with E33, glue that on. And once again, a reminder, I've already found all the parts, taken them off the screws, cleaned them all up, so that we don't have to watch that. And once again, I'm going to take the connector and I'm going to place it approximately level, ready to go right there. So with that built, we're going to move on to the axle, I guess axle housing. So this might be kind of difficult to figure out what to do. It looks like from the drawing that we want to have it with this part down here. It looks like it's universal, or universal. Either way isn't going to matter. This one, however, does have a knob here and a hole here. So going off of that, I'm hoping that this will, well, there we go. For this to fit, it's off that way. Flip this around. So be aware that for whatever reason, these are not, this isn't actually universal. It only goes on one way. Now, some people have asked, well, what do I do when the parts are a little, like that? They don't stick together. Well, what I like to do is just very gently just re-bend them back in. And by doing that, it should solidify. At least I hope so. Put that together like so. Boom and done. I happen to like how nicely things stick together then. Now, the only other cue that I can go with is that there is a notch, but the notch is on both sides. So I've got to, in this case, I've got to just make a judgment call on what I think this is. And I admit this is difficult. So looking down at the next step, I see that there's a notch on this side, like this, and the cap cover, whatever transmission cover, is on this side. So I'm going to say that for this step right here with D14, you have the protrusion on this side and the hole on this side, and that's the orientation for putting the cap on here. That's my deduction from it. So place that right on there, like so. There we go. So now we've got the axle done, we've got the gearbox done. Moving on to the next part. And I'm moving along a little bit quicker here. I would recommend, if you want, you can take your time and let the glue dry a little bit. But at this point in time, we have the hole on this side like it shows on the instructions, and the protrusion on that side. We have the slots up as on here, and this is keyed, so we can start gluing on the interior part of the wheel mount, or the brake housing, if that's actually what it is, or I'm not sure exactly. Same with this side, right here. Now, in this case, I'm going to put the parts on top first and then add the gearbox. So, notches are on there, but this has some curvature to it, and it fits on there pretty solidly. It is at an angle, just so you're aware. It's not square, but it goes on there very solid. And then, as we've seen with the other axles, we just put the kind of indented and vented part here. And I'm not sure if this is a control arm or what, but you'll notice that I kind of missed dealing with this punch out. So, did that. I like the way that looks. So gripping it, I like gripping it this way. Picking this up, and at this point in time, the large circle on the bottom has a key to go into the indent like that. But just so you see, just put this together like so. Glue it on. There we go. Now we're that far along, no issues. I like it when I can say that. So at this point, while I'm kind of letting that dry a bit, I'm gonna glue this on. It looks like it goes straight up and down in the instructions. Looking at the peg that it goes on, there's no key, so I'm gonna glue this just like that, so that that's horizontal like it shows on there. Again, just to follow the instructions and do what seems to be making things easier. And also on the bottom, the two holes for parts K22. They appear to be universal. I haven't noticed any difference between one way or the other. And K22 on this side as well. Now, it seems like there's a little bit of slop on this one for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because that's smaller or some other issue. There doesn't seem to be any difference here. Doesn't seem to be anything else. So just be aware that there might be a little bit of, oh, there now, it seems to have settled down. There might be a little bit of issue with putting part K22 on, but if you look at it, everything seems to be straight. It's gluing in, looks good. So taking this part here, the peg that's on the first part that we did is where we're going to be gluing on this cylinder with the end of a drive shaft, or not 100% sure. I'm assuming it might even be part of the power takeoff or something else. Again, one of the more interesting things about doing these builds is doing the research and figuring out what all this is for. I admit I have not done the research. Something that can be done that's fun. While I'm waiting for that to dry, taking these H5 parts, and then I'm going to glue on the appropriate J16 part, following the key, dropping it on the instructions, but put the part in the hole for the peg, get it on there nice and solid, put a little extra glue in there. Then I'm going to move on to these. Now I do want to give this a little bit of time to glue down, so solidify, take that on. So I'm going to move on to these parts, and once again with K13 and K5 I have left the two little mounting points on the bottom instead of scraping them off. I found that that worked pretty well, and I'm hoping that the low battery alert on my phone didn't just cause this to pause out. We'll have to find out. So I'm going to move along a little bit quicker if I can. Once again, putting the pegs in between, putting the glue on this side. I'm going to move this along. So, part there, part here. Glue it together. Drop the part on the floor, but that's okay. While I'm looking for the part, that'll be starting to solidify, so once I find it, again, there's the part, so I can just slide this in actually a little bit easier, in my opinion. And the parts are gluing, so I can add a little bit of cement in there to kind of firm it up. There we go. And then I'll do the same thing with this step on this side. Once again, this is while the rest of the glue is firming up. Once you've built models for quite a while, you kind of get a feel for how much time you really need in between for this. You know, if you need to be really quick about it, or if you have a little bit of time to work with it. That's partly why I like the Testors glue that I work with, is it gives me more time to work with it. Yeah, it's not as maybe as popular as the Tamiya Super Thin, but I really do like working with it. I think it's a good medium, moderate, good everyday run-of-the-mill cement to work with. And again, while I'm waiting, I'm going to glue on parts H10 using the little attachment points found on the inside to stick that on in a good spot. Same with this one. There we are. So that's on. For some reason it doesn't quite feel right. A little bit of liquid glue in there, and it's good. So there's that. So now we're at the point to where basically we have to attach the air canisters to the axle. Then we add the arms to the axle, and we pop it all on. If you've been watching the previous episodes of this, you know that that can be kind of a chore. So at this point in time, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to put the arms on first without the air canisters and see if that doesn't help keep things from getting too weird and wiggly as far as moving parts that I don't want moved. after they're glued on. So this is how this part goes here. And the important thing to notice is that with this put together the way that they show right here, you're going to flip it around 180 to get that part there. This one built up here, once again like this, flip it 180 and that goes there. So that'll hopefully give you a little bit more orientation. But again, got to cram this into part K22 without breaking anything, and hopefully, I almost feel like it might be better to put K22 on before gluing this together, considering how difficult this is to get in there. So I'm turning it around so that I can handle it better. Yep, there I moved a part that was on there. And once again, as we learned in the past, this is difficult to work with. There we go. So now we deal with the damage that was wrought. So at this point, that is properly attached to there. K22 is pushed down. Now I know it's still soft, but I do want this to have enough glue to get a nice positive attachment when this all does fully dry. So I'd rather put a little extra glue in there. At this point, yeah, it might soften up the attachment, but it will give me some peace of mind. Now I'm squishing some of that plastic, soft plastic, in to put that part back on, like so, to smooth it out. Maybe might give it a little bit more authenticity in the end, look kind of cool, or it might look dorky. We'll find out. The important part is I got one on. Now let's see how this one goes on. I'm hoping better. So since I know that that's not going on so well, I'm gonna actually remove this. Let's test our theory and try and put this on, not on the axle, where I can get more pressure. And maybe this can also spread apart a little bit easier. But it's still kind of squirrely. And and it doesn't want to go on. So even without putting on H10, now it might almost be that you want to do K22 first before you do anything else with K5 or K13, because there, I finally popped it on and it is without any parts. So I will pop this back in, which is okay. I'm gonna do just a little bit of glue in there again, just to make sure. I'm gonna do a little bit of glue on there and pop H10 back on. There we go. Glue there, little glue there. And then I'm going to put the glue inside of K22 this time. And make sure there's a little bit of accumulation, that it doesn't get too dry. And then pop that on right there. And squish it down. Nice. And there we have it. So I think my recommendation dealing with these axles is going to be take your large brace piece, K13 or K5, put K22 on first, then either attach the arms and then attach it all to the axle and then attach H10 or some combination of it, but that's what I would recommend as far as that goes, just because it seems to do a little bit less damage overall to the parts while you're putting it together. Now it's time to put on the air brakes, and in this case what you want to do is look at the instructions, see that they are like this. There we go. So we have this piece right here, so we know that these are going in this direction. Things are rather jumpy, so I'm putting more glue in there, taking this part so it's like this and this, but I'm turning it so I can see it better and putting it right there. Now I don't have the back piece in yet, probably should, or I'm sorry, J34 in this case. I have not placed that in yet, and I probably should have, but I will do that now. I did put some glue in first, and there, the parts are together. Now, the thing that I'm noticing is that J34 should not go in quite all the way. It should have a little bit of slack so that everything sits square. If you push it in all the way, it seems like it won't sit square, and it wants to lean. So put some glue there. Put some glue there. Put this on first, and then sneaking this in the side. And this one's a little bit harder, so I'm gonna use this to push it in, and watch that fall off. And there we go. Now this is not staying together. So, you know, if you feel like some days you're modeling, putting stuff together, and things just aren't going your way, well, yeah, that happens to all of us. And it looks like what the problem is that this does need to be moved in closer. So now that I've done that, and things are floppy, I mean, I will admit that this is out of sequence and that may cause some issues. But now that that's all in place, I'm noticing I put it on a little bit too much. So I'm going to take my forceps here and wiggle that out. Okay, that looks pretty good, relatively square. So now we're going to move on to putting it on the frame. So once again, as we've done in the past, we've got the angles to the back, flat to the bottom, so that they look generally like that. Take the parts, find out where these are going to attach, right here and here off of that brace. Looks good. Add some glue here, add some glue here, and mount in this case. Now, speaking of earlier about how much work time you have to deal with the glue and so on, dealing with the axle parts here, don't mix up E3 and E34. And I'm going to try and put this on straight one way and then not quite so straight the other way, using this set of tweezers and some hope and praying, because this is where things get kind of tight, and I don't want to break by pushing down. I feel like I'm going to break this axle. Now if I can push from underneath, maybe I can get this to attach relatively easy, or not. Let's see, kind of at an angle there. Kind of, sort of in. Kind of, sort of not in. Okay, we're in. And then we have to deal with our new axle, which may not want to have all its parts stay attached while we're attaching the axle. Especially this one that's on a post. Now, one answer that we could use to doing this is to open up the mouth here by, pop that off, by prying the sides open, making it a little bit easier to put in. Do it that way too. You can see how it spreads them out. Then you can lift the axle up like so. Attach that hopefully a little bit easier. Yep, slaps right in. And then doing that. And reorienting all the parts, making sure everything's okay. And now that axle is in place. And what I'm going to do is put a little bit of extra glue in the joint to get that to go together. But this is all solidly in place, as is the one in front. And now all we have left is this axle. And the thicker piston side, or even the longer one, is the one that goes towards this way, and then the shorter end goes down below. And as you can see, it is a pretty precise fit, and it doesn't want to fit pretty precisely. So it might be a case where it's better to put it all together. Now, what happened here, and this might happen to you, is I bent the axle sideways, putting it on properly, or trying to do it straight, but I was able to bend it back. However, the weak point is shown right here, this short piece right in the middle. So be aware that that might be an issue. Be aware that, you know, if things are off by even a small amount, things might be really pressed and tight. Best I can tell you is check and make sure everything on your kit as you're gluing it is nice and secure and straight. Check over all the parts at this point in time to make sure nothing got knocked loose while you were doing your maneuvering of axle struts, gear parts, whatever you want to call it. I think it looks pretty good. This is us through step 7. And I hope that you have as much success with this as I did.